Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Start with the name of Allah who is most merciful. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the noise around us becomes louder than the voice within us. Opinions fly freely, judgments arrive uninvited, and advice is offered by those who have never walked our path. In that moment, strength is not found in defending yourself, explaining yourself, or proving your worth. Strength is found in silence, not the silence of weakness, but the silence of wisdom, a silence that turns inward, that listens deeply, that focuses the heart on growth rather than applause. When you choose to be silent and focus on yourself, you are not giving up. You are rising. You are choosing healing over arguing, purpose over distraction, and sincerity over validation. Today, this message is not about running away from the world, but about reclaiming yourself from it. Because the most powerful transformation begins when you stop reacting to everything around you and start responding to the call within you. There is a wisdom hidden in silence that the world rarely teaches us. We are raised to speak, to respond, to defend, to explain, to prove. From a young age, we are told that our voice must be loud to matter, that our presence must be visible to be acknowledged, that if we are quiet, we will be forgotten. But the heart knows a deeper truth, one that reveals itself not in moments of applause, but in moments of stillness. Silence is not absence. Silence is presence. It is the space where the soul finally hears itself after being drowned by noise for so long. When you choose silence, you are not running away from life, you are stepping into it with awareness. There are times when speaking drains you, when explaining yourself leaves you empty, when defending your intentions feels heavier than the misunderstanding itself. In those moments, silence becomes mercy. Mercy upon your heart, mercy upon your energy, mercy upon your spirit. Silence protects what is sacred within you. It shields the fragile beginnings of growth from the harsh winds of judgment and comparison. Just as a seed must be buried in darkness before it breaks through the soil, the soul must sometimes retreat inward before it can rise stronger than before. Many people misunderstand silence. They think it is weakness, fear, or surrender. But silence is restraint, and restraint requires strength. It takes courage to remain quiet when misunderstood, to remain composed when provoked, to remain focused when distracted by voices that do not carry wisdom. Silence is not passive. It is intentional. It is a conscious decision to stop bleeding energy into conversations that do not heal, arguments that do not elevate, and explanations that are never truly heard. There is a difference between being silent and being silenced. One is chosen, the other is imposed. When you choose silence, you reclaim your power. You decide where your energy goes. You decide which voices deserve access to your heart. You decide that not every thought requires an audience, and not every emotion requires validation from the outside world. Silence allows you to observe instead of react, to reflect instead of retaliate, to understand instead of assume. In silence, the soul begins to detox. It releases resentment stored in unspoken expectations, grief buried under forced smiles, exhaustion masked by productivity. The noise of the world trains us to constantly perform, to constantly respond, to constantly be available. Silence interrupts that cycle. It reminds you that you are not a machine designed to produce responses on demand. You are a human being with a heart that needs rest, a mind that needs clarity, and a soul that needs connection beyond words. There are wounds that cannot be healed through discussion alone. Some wounds heal only when they are given space. when they are acknowledged without being dissected, when they are held gently instead of explained away. Silence gives you that space. It allows you to sit with your pain without rushing to justify it, to honor your emotions without needing permission to feel them, to grieve what was lost without being told to move on too quickly. When you remain silent, you begin to notice things you were too distracted to see before. You notice how often you spoke just to be accepted. You notice how often you explained yourself to those who had already decided not to understand you. You notice how much energy you spent managing other people's perceptions instead of nurturing your own growth. Silence becomes a mirror, reflecting truths that were always there but hidden beneath layers of noise. In silence, intentions become clearer. You start to distinguish between what you truly want and what you were conditioned to chase. The opinions that once controlled your decisions lose their grip when they are no longer fed by constant engagement. The need for validation softens when you stop offering your inner world for public approval. Silence teaches you that not everyone needs access to your journey, and not every chapter of your life needs to be narrated. There is a sacredness in guarding your inner process. Growth is delicate. Transformation is intimate. When you expose it too early to critique, comparison, or skepticism, it can shrink under pressure. Silence allows your growth to mature in safety. It gives your intentions time to root deeply before being tested by external forces. What grows quietly often grows stronger. The world rewards reaction. It applauds quick responses, sharp comebacks, visible emotion. But the soul thrives on reflection. It needs pauses, not pressure. It needs depth, not speed. Silence slows you down enough to reconnect with your inner compass. It helps you remember who you are when no one is watching, when no one is commenting, when no one is applauding. There is also humility in silence. It teaches you that you do not need to be right all the time, that you do not need to win every conversation, that you do not need to correct every misunderstanding. Sometimes peace is more valuable than clarity, and dignity is more valuable than recognition. Silence preserves that dignity. It allows you to walk away without bitterness, without resentment, without dragging unnecessary weight behind you. In moments of conflict, silence can be an act of wisdom. It prevents words spoken in emotion from becoming wounds that never fully heal. It gives you time to respond from intention rather than impulse. It reminds you that not every battle deserves your participation, and not every provocation deserves your attention. Silence filters what enters your heart and what leaves your mouth. Silence also reveals your relationship with yourself. When external noise fades, what remains is your inner dialogue. For some, that can be uncomfortable. Silence exposes unresolved fears, unmet needs, and unhealed pain. But that discomfort is not a sign to escape. It is an invitation to heal. The voices you avoid in noise are often the voices that need compassion in quiet. As you sit in silence, you begin to build trust with yourself. You learn to listen without judgment, to observe without condemnation, to accept without denial. You become more aware of your emotional patterns, your triggers, your needs. Silence gives you the space to respond to yourself with kindness instead of criticism, with patience instead of pressure. There is also a spiritual dimension to silence that transcends words. In silence, the heart becomes receptive, the mind becomes humbly, the soul becomes attentive. It is often in silence that clarity descends, not as loud answers, but as gentle certainty, not as dramatic signs, but as quiet reassurance. Silence aligns you with truth, because truth does not need to shout. When you embrace silence, you stop seeking constant affirmation from the outside. You realize that approval does not equal alignment, and attention does not equal purpose. Silence teaches you to measure success by inner peace rather than external praise, by sincerity rather than visibility, by consistency rather than applause. There is strength in being able to walk through misunderstanding without explaining yourself. There is maturity in allowing people to believe what they choose while you remain anchored in who you know you are. Silence becomes a form of self-respect. It says, I trust myself enough not to prove myself. Silence also protects your intentions from corruption. When you constantly talk about your goals, they can become performances rather than commitments. When you constantly share your plans, they can become diluted by other people's doubts and projections. Silence allows your goals to remain pure, driven by purpose rather than pressure. As you grow comfortable with silence, you realize that your worth was never dependent on how much space you occupied in conversations. Your value does not increase with volume, it deepens with substance. Silence refines that substance. It removes excess. It leaves only what is essential. In silence, patience grows. You stop rushing outcomes. You stop forcing timelines. You begin to trust the process unfolding within you. Silence teaches you that growth is not always visible, that progress is not always loud, that transformation is often happening beneath the surface long before it appears outwardly. Silence also softens the ego. It reminds you that you do not need to be the center of every discussion, that you do not need to be seen to be significant, that you do not need to be acknowledged to be aligned. This humility does not diminish you, it expands you. It frees you from the exhausting need to constantly assert your existence. There is a quiet confidence that comes from silence. It is not arrogance, it is assurance. It is the calm of someone who knows their direction and does not need to announce it. It is the steadiness of someone who trusts their path even when it is not understood by others. When you choose silence, you are choosing depth over distraction, healing over performance, alignment over approval. You are choosing to invest energy inward rather than scattering it outward. You are choosing to honor your inner world as something worthy of protection and care. Silence does not isolate you, it centers you. It does not weaken you, it strengthens you. It does not erase your voice, it refines it. When you eventually speak from silence, your words carry weight, intention, and clarity. They are no longer reactions, they are reflections. There is a time to speak, and there is a time to be silent. Wisdom is knowing the difference. Silence prepares you for meaningful speech by cleansing the heart of excess emotion and sharpening the mind with insight. It ensures that when you do speak, you speak from truth rather than turbulence. In a world that constantly demands noise, choosing silence is a form of resistance. It is a declaration that your peace matters, that your growth matters, that your inner alignment matters more than external validation. Silence becomes a sanctuary where the soul can breathe, reflect, and realign. Focusing on yourself is not an act of selfishness, it is an act of responsibility. It is the moment you realize that the condition of your heart determines the quality of everything you touch. Many people fear focusing on themselves because they confuse it with arrogance or isolation. But true self-focus is neither. It is awareness, it is accountability. It is the willingness to sit with your own soul and ask difficult questions without running away from the answers. We are taught from an early age to look outward for direction. We look to people for approval, to society for standards, to comparison for validation. Over time, this outward gaze becomes habitual, and we lose the ability to recognize our own needs, our own wounds, our own intentions. Focusing on yourself reverses that gaze. It turns your attention inward, not to inflate the ego, but to heal what has been neglected. When you do not focus on yourself, you live in reaction. Your mood shifts with people's words. Your confidence rises and falls with their opinions. Your sense of worth becomes fragile, dependent on external feedback. Focusing on yourself stabilizes you. It grounds you in something deeper than praise and stronger than criticism. It teaches you that your value is intrinsic, not assigned. True self-focus requires honesty. It asks you to acknowledge where you are weak without self-hatred, where you are strong without pride, and where you are stagnant without denial. It is easier to point out flaws in others than to confront discomfort within ourselves. But growth begins where excuses end. When you focus on yourself, you stop blaming circumstances and start examining choices. There is a quiet discipline in self-focus. It means paying attention to your thoughts before they become beliefs, to your habits before they become character, to your intentions before they become actions. It is an ongoing process, not a destination. Every day becomes an opportunity to realign, to refine, to return to what truly matters. Focusing on yourself also teaches you boundaries. When you understand your limits, you stop overextending yourself to please others. When you recognize your emotional capacity, you stop absorbing energy that does not belong to you. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They protect your inner peace so that you can show up in the world with sincerity rather than resentment. There is a deep freedom that comes with focusing on yourself. You stop living life as a performance and start living it as a purpose. You stop chasing recognition and start cultivating integrity. You stop asking, "How do I appear?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" This shift changes everything. When you focus on yourself, comparison loses its power. You realize that everyone is running a different race with different starting points, different struggles, and different timelines. Comparison only exists when you measure your worth against someone else's visibility. Self-focus measures growth against your own past. It asks whether you are more patient than you were before, more aware, more intentional. Focusing on yourself also means taking responsibility for your emotional health. It means noticing patterns that harm you, relationships that drain you, and habits that distance you from inner peace. It means understanding that healing is not something that happens to you, it is something you actively participate in. No one can do that inner work on your behalf. There are moments when focusing on yourself feels uncomfortable because it strips away distractions. Without constant engagement with others' lives, you are left with your own thoughts. Without constant validation, you are left with your own sense of worth. That discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong, it is a sign that something real is happening. Self-focus teaches patience. You learn that growth cannot be rushed and healing cannot be forced. You learn to respect your own process instead of pressuring yourself to meet expectations that were never aligned with you. Patience with yourself becomes the foundation for patience with others. When you focus on yourself, you become more intentional with your energy. You stop pouring into spaces where you are not valued and start investing in what nourishes your soul. You learn that exhaustion is often a sign of misalignment, not weakness. Self-focus allows you to realign before burnout becomes your language. There is also humility in focusing on yourself. It requires admitting that you do not have everything figured out, that you are still learning, still growing, still unlearning. This humility opens the door to transformation. It keeps the heart soft and the mind receptive. Focusing on yourself does not mean disconnecting from the world. It means engaging with it consciously. You become more present in conversations because you are not seeking approval. You become more compassionate because you understand your own struggles. You become more authentic because you are no longer trying to fit into molds that were never made for you. When you neglect self-focus, you may achieve things outwardly while remaining empty inwardly. You may appear successful while feeling disconnected. You may be surrounded by people while feeling unseen. Self-focus addresses that emptiness by reconnecting you with your inner compass. It reminds you why you started, what you value, and where you are headed. There is a spiritual depth to focusing on yourself that goes beyond self-improvement. It is about alignment. Alignment between your actions and your intentions, between your words and your values, between your inner state and your outer behavior. When alignment exists, peace follows naturally. Self-focus also sharpens discernment.